you guys, and welcome back to my channel. I actually was inspired to do this video mainly because the first video that I posted like this has gained so much attention. So go ahead and watch the part 1 of this. So it's story time, times that I avoided being human trafficked in New York City. Now I know what you guys are thinking. You're like, you already told us the stories. What makes us believe that you have more? And honestly, I think it's because a lot of strange things happened to me over the course of the 6 years that I lived in New York City, but you don't always think at the time what they could be. And so later on, when you're like reminded of them or you reflect on them and you're like, like that could have potentially been a human trafficking situation or kidnapping situation or something like that. So just so you guys know, like I said, this is not a situation to be taken lightly. Like, this is honestly not clickbait or anything. I just noticed that the video has garnered a lot of attention and a lot of people are, you know, very grateful and appreciative that people share their knowledge and so forth. So I only have one more story for you guys today, and it's actually because I was watching another girl's video about her time that she thought she might have been, you know, almost a victim of human trafficking with her husband, and it just reminded me of an experience that I had on the subway. So I want to share this with you guys as well. Once again, like I said, it's not 100% sure that it's human trafficking. It could just be weird. But looking back on it and like watching all these other videos, I'm starting to see some like themes. So without further ado, let's jump into the video. And just like last time, you guys can let me know in the comments below if you think this could be human trafficking, what your thoughts are on this, and yeah. Okay, so this story takes place in like early 2019. So I became pregnant in January of 2019. So this was like a couple months into my pregnancy. I wasn't showing yet or anything. I actually worked my full-time corporate job and continued being a personal trainer all the way until I gave birth. So at this point, nothing had really changed for me. I remember that I was coming home from work, so I was commuting home from work. I work in Midtown, but I was living uptown in New York City, so I have a fairly long commute. I take 2 trains. The second train is an express train, so I'm on it for a while. And it was rush hour, so it was pretty crowded. And I remember I was on the train and I was actually standing holding the pole. So if you guys have ever been to New York City and you're in the subway, you know that there's little poles that you can hold on to for balance if there's no seats available. And like I said, because I wasn't showing, like nobody was giving up their seat for me, and I was totally fine. I didn't ask for anyone to give up their seat for me. So I'm standing there and I think I was listening to music in my headphones, and this woman gets on the train, she boards, and she stands on the same pole. So she's sharing the pole with me. And she looks around my age. She is, you know, attractive, nothing crazy either way. And she's wearing a hijab, I think that's how you say it. And I don't really think anything of it at all. And then I hear her say like, "Oh, your lashes are really pretty." And it came out of nowhere, but honestly, I get complimented on my lash extensions all the time, especially when I lived in New York City and I had the best lash tech ever. So I'm like, "Oh, thank you so much." Like, she's like, "Are those your real lashes?" And I'm like, "No, they're lash extensions. And if you're looking for a great lash tech, like I can give you her Instagram information," which I always did. I always shouted out my lash tech. And you know, it's just like girl talk, no big deal. So I end up giving her the Instagram of my lash tech, and she kind of just sparks up a conversation and she's saying stuff, and I think she ends up asking me, you know, like what I do for work. And looking back, I feel like she was a little too friendly, but at the time I was like, oh no, like she's someone my age, like she just complimented me, she's just being nice. And then she actually, I think she ends up asking me like, do I have any kids, which was ironic because I was pregnant at the time and she couldn't tell. So at that point I went ahead and I was like, "Oh, I'm actually pregnant right now." And she goes, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing." And she says something about how she has a toddler herself. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like maybe we could be friends at this point. Like, I'm genuinely thinking like we could be friends. She's asking me more about what I do. I end up telling her that I'm a personal trainer, and she's like, oh wow, like I really want to get in shape. It was hard for me to get in shape after my baby, which is like super common for women. So we're sort of just like clicking. I was like, maybe she can be a great client and I can train her. So she's asking me like what gym I'm a member of and where I train, and I'm letting her know like all this stuff. And I still wasn't feeling too weird until we start talking about work. And I think I made a comment like saying like, oh, like I'm working through my pregnancy, and she sort of like had like a sympathetic tone, and she's like, oh, well, actually, there's this job. And I'm really trying to remember exactly how she said it, but long story short, she was basically saying like, there's this job that my brother does that he just got, and it's a really amazing job, and maybe if you're looking to change careers, you know, I could hook you up with it. So like my interest is piqued a little bit because I'm like, and she's like, yeah, like it doesn't require like long hours, like it would be perfect for you, especially because, you know, you're gonna be pregnant this year. And I'm like, all this is sounding really good. I'm like, not long hours, lots of money, like all this stuff, like you can hand my resume to someone, like great. So she's like, you know what, like let me take your information. Sorry, I had a notification. So she's like, let me take your information and I can pass it along to these people. And I'm like, well, can you tell me more about the job? Like, what is it? And oh my gosh, it was like a huge roundabout thing where she doesn't actually give me like a job position or a title. She tells me this huge long story, because mind you, like I said, I was on this train for a long time. So she tells me this huge long story about how her husband or her brother had come across these guys, and these guys were a part of this exclusive company or business, and they only accept certain people, and they don't tell you much about the position until you go there and you present yourself, and they want to see how you are. I remember her saying a lot of times like they want to see how you are, like they want to see how you present yourself. And she was kind of trying to make it seem like this was like a super exclusive, sought out for position. But the more questions I asked, the more I was becoming confused, because I'm like, okay, what's the name of the company? She would avoid that question. I'm like, what's the name of the job position? She would avoid that question. I asked her if there was a place that I could send a resume, and she avoided that question. But honestly, you guys, like at the time, even though in my head I'm like, this is weird, I wasn't really putting the pieces together all the way. So I'm like, like, and she's like, yeah, like people that do this position, they end up as millionaires and like all this stuff. And she's like telling me these little anecdotes of people that she knows that have gone from nothing to becoming millionaires just by working with these people. And she was like, they change your life. It's like they change your energy, and they change your energy, and it makes you more successful and everything. So I'm not really, you know, putting all the pieces together, but I am thinking like this is really weird and I'm probably not interested. But we did end up exchanging numbers and exchanging Instagrams because, like I said, she had said she was interested in training. So I think she, you know, got off the subway, and I ended up going home, and I told Joel, my husband, and, you know, we both thought it was like a little bit weird, but I didn't think too much of it. And you know, luckily nothing transpired from that, because I think she ended up texting me, and I just told her that I couldn't train her, and I ignored her messages, but she was pretty persistent, and I ended up blocking her and everything, and honestly nothing transpired from that. But looking back, and thinking about how the conversation came to be and what she was telling me, I feel like it could have ended up as a really strange situation. I remember her telling me that she went to this gym in the Bronx, and if I could meet her there, and I was even considering it, and I'm not familiar with the Bronx whatsoever. I think I had briefly even looked at her Instagram page, and it was just giving me like weird vibes. There weren't a lot of like followers on it. There weren't a lot of comments. It was just really weird vibes. And like the more I think about it, the more I think that there was something fishy going on. But that's just something really quick that I wanted to share with you guys. And you know, I think it's important to continue to keep spreading awareness of all these stories, and hopefully if you're in a similar situation, like you'll remember something that you heard or saw online and it will help you to make a more informed decision. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this quick short video. Comment down below what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next video.